Time to go to work.
I'm live open mic. He's Sho Futuristic. We have played Assassin's Creed Nexus. Let's talk about it. Now, neither one of us has completed the full game, right? You haven't completed it? Okay. No, so we're just going to give our impressions of what we played so far. Off the top of your head, what was your first impression when you got in?
Beautiful. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous game. The thing that first impressed me, actually, and it's so minor, right? There's a room that you enter when you first get a chance to control Ezio, and you have an opportunity to pick up a cane. But when you pick up that cane and you just start jamming around with real physics, right? You can gently tap a vase, you can gently tip a vase, you can gently push over a door. Like, okay, the physics in this game are on point.
I looked at it knowing for a fact that game was built for Quest 2. And I was like, all right, I'm playing this on Quest 3. It's got an improved resolution. That's probably not going to be in the version that they built. So I kind of had my expectations lower for what I was going to see visually. And then after you went through the first time I loaded, did it take 2 minutes for it to load for you? The first time you booted the game? It took a hot minute. Yeah, it took a hot minute. So, you go through all the setup and all the stuff, and you play VR, yada, yada, yada. Then when you finally get Ezio, have to go through all that stuff because that was a little bit tedious for someone who's been in VR for a while. Same. I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting this. And, man, you get so used to on mobile games, them being really short draw distance, a ton of fog, not a lot of, like I'm used to not interact with everything. And there wasn't a ton to interact with in that scene, like the vases and the cane. Yeah, I get that. But it was just like, I felt like I was in that world, and I have very little Assassin's Creed background. I've seen a lot of it just because of Twitch, but I was like, whoa, this is something. Okay. Ubisoft, you got me. We'll see.
You really didn't play it flat? You never played the older Assassin's Creed? Interesting.
Never. Okay. I have seen, I'm pretty sure I've seen every game except Mirage at this point via Twitch because I've watched. I had a casual interest in it. And I have some friends who are very into the game, so I've seen a lot of them stream. But no, I've never played one. So I came into it having only seen it but not experienced it myself.
Okay, because my take was Ubisoft. I have to give them credit, right? They made a fantastic representation of the Assassin's Creed experience in VR. I've played a lot of the earlier games, and they captured it perfectly. But Ben Lang on Road to VR made some comments on Twitter about how this is not the next coming of great VR games. It's a good game, it's solid, but it's janky, right? Newsflash. Assassin's Creed has kind of always been a mid-series, right? I mean, being really honest, right? So when he said that, I'm like, yeah, Assassin's Creed was never a top-tier AAA game anyway. It's always had the budget, but, it's never going to win Game of the Year. So they translated that very well into VR. One of the early complaints that I'd read online about how it's too easy. Again, newsflash. When you're in VR, everything feels easier because you have a one-to-one, connection with the character. Driving games are easier in VR. Every climbing game is easier in VR. It's not because the game's easier, you connect with it better. So it's a solid game.
I cannot think of a truly, really, really difficult VR game. Like I'm struggling to come up with. There have been some that have I'll get stuck on the boss for a little while, but I'll eventually win it. But there's no Dark Souls in VR. You know what I'm saying? There's no game that's like, I'm going to play this for 50 hours, but there's only about 10 hours of gameplay here. It just takes me 50 hours to beat this one boss.
Right.
And I played Grimlord and Undead Citadel and all those games who said they were Souls like. They're not that. So you make a good point there. And the other point that I'm glad that you said, because I couldn't say this, I didn't have the credibility to say this. It felt to me like they represented what Assassin's Creed was in VR. Yeah. To me, that's what Ubisoft set out to do. I think there were a lot of expectations heaped on this game that it was going to be like some transformative experience. Alex, which that game always comes up whenever a big game is coming out, is will it compare it to the best VR game ever made? I don't think Ubisoft wanted to do that. And frankly, like you said not too long ago, Ubisoft doesn't make games of the year. They don't make... Ubisoft is very rarely in the running for game of the year. I think the last one was the Mario Rabbids game that they made?
And right. That's the first time they've been in content.
Yeah. And that's the first time you had Mario. You had a recognizable IP to kind of boost you there. But they've never been known for making games like that. So for making a faithful representation of what they did on flat screen, from my perspective, I was pretty happy with what I saw.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to come off like I'm slamming Ubisoft. As a matter of fact, the thing that impressed me was how it was a collection of VR ideas that we've seen in all the other games combined in one thing, all done very, very well. The climbing was smooth. We've seen that in The Climb, right? The physics interaction was smooth. It wasn't janky. We've seen that in a number of VR games. What we got here was a full world, which I honestly didn't think we were going to get in VR. I thought if we didn't see it on Grand Theft Auto, we are never going to get it. But we saw it here today. It looks fantastic. There were great interactions on a mobile chipset, and it's fun. It gave me hope, but it also made me incredibly sad watching this game.
Why sad? Why sad?
Because I'm looking at this going, they're not going to make the return on investment on this, right? Meta, who's funding this, right? Meta has to fit the bill for this and Resident Evil. They bought Asgard Rap Team, right? So at what point is Meta just going to go, yeah, this isn't worth it? It's an incredible game. It's fantastic looking, but there's no way this is sustainable.
I think for Ubisoft, this will be a win because this gets, number one, they didn't fund the entire game. So to them, Meta it's like there was development time there, but yeah, Meta ponied up the money for it. For Ubisoft, this is a win. They're like, yeah, Meta, you give us more money, we'll make Splinter Cell. I think it was a little over ambitious for them to announce both of those games at the same time. I saw some rhetoric online that people thought Splinter Cell would have made a better VR game, but they're not saying that until they actually played this game. For all we know, Splinter Cell would have been the same thing, mechanic-wise. Because to me, there's been one truly great stealth game in VR, and that was Phantom Corridors from In Dreams. And I played the E-Spire games. I'm currently in the middle of Vampire, the Masquerade Justice. All perfectly fine games, not great stealth games. Because you can absolutely ramble and rampage your way through every single one of them.
So you think Covert Ops is the best stealth game to date, till this?
Yes. Really? And I've only played 2 hours of this game, so I can't even say if this one's better or not.
Okay.
But to me, Phantom Corridors is the best spy game ever made in VR. Because they put the emphasis on you're screwed if you get spotted. You are absolutely screwed. You're probably not going to live. Get ready to go back to your checkpoint. You're not getting out of this. Even though like the normal
there are
difficulty.
Instant fail states in this game, right? I mean, it's not all if you get spotted, you can just hack your way through. There are places in this game where if you get spotted, back to start a mission, right?
Yeah, and Phantom doesn't have like instant fail states, but basically it's once you get spotted, there are at least 3 to 5 guys shooting at you immediately. And you don't get to safety quickly. By the way, your cover zones are now unveiled. If you once you get seen, you're screwed. But the game emphasizes don't get seen, and I feel like this game really kind of gave you a bit more of that. So it's Vampire Masquerade Justice, but you're also an OP vampire in that game. So you got some attacks that you can do that can actually dispatch people in a hurry. This game, you have to throw knives, but that's within like the realm of what you're actually supposed to be doing as an assassin. And I've seen enough Assassin's Creed to know that that's lore. That's canon. This felt to me like a flat game translated to VR, not a flat game with a VR port. There is a very distinct difference between the two of those.
What are the distinctions that you see that make something made for VR versus translated to VR? What are the types of things that you think makes that?
Okay, so I'll use No Man's Sky as an example because I'm going to preface again. I love that game. No Man's Sky feels like I have a VR headset on, but I'm using the mouse and the keyboard. That's how that game felt. With the exception of...
Is it because of the third-person perspective?
No, because I played the game in first person. With the exception of when you're flying your ship, everything is point and click. You never actually grab anything. It never really feels like you interact with the world in that game.
Okay. Did you feel that way with Resident Evil?
No, because the way I set up, there were 2 different options for weapons in that game. You could actually do the whole weapon wheel, or you could do grabbing off your body. The second I'm able to grab something off my body, the second I'm able to eject the clip, grab a clip from somewhere else, pop it in there, pull back the slide, keep shooting, I'm good. The second you give me some mechanics that I cannot do on flat screen for any reason, that on flat screen would just be an animation that would just tap one button to do, I'm sold. When it's a visceral physical game, when it gives you that element to it, that's what really sells it. That's what really like drives it forward for me. This game felt like a fully realized VR game. Like they took everything that happens in Assassin's Creed on flat screen and they said, okay, how do you do this in VR? And they figured out a way to do it. Right down to the parkour, which was a button press, but I don't see how I was going to hop from ledge to ledge or plank to plank in VR because there's no foot tracking and so on and so forth. So to me, all the interactions feel like they belong in the VR game.
Yeah, I love the way they handled it. I'm glad they didn't go all out like The Climb. And in fact, we saw a little bit of that in Hubris, expert climbing mechanics in VR, right? I don't need grip strength. I don't need to know, that my fingers are getting tired and I can slip and fall. I love the fact I don't need, this game doesn't have guns, but every game doesn't have to have manual reloading for me. And I think that they found the perfect balance for arcade. Like, I'm glad this doesn't feel like blatant sorcery. You don't even really have to really about parrying. You just block the attack, you look at the direction, it still happens pretty quickly. You can see they signal their moves, and you get right back into the action. There's no breakup in flow. It doesn't stop dramatically like what's that other game? Cryman, Mercenary Tales, which has a similar combat flow but nowhere near as polished. Right? I always hated the combat in Assassin's Creed anyway. I've always thought the combat in flat Assassin's Creed is clunky. So people look at Assassin's Creed and think it's going to control like Batman or Spider-Man flat, and it doesn't. It's very slow and telegraphed, and it's all about the parry. This one's a lot more fluid. It retains some of that, but it moves a lot better. It feels like you're controlling your character. You're in the moment. And it's arcadey. I loved it. I thought it was a great compromise. And I think it works better in VR than it does flat. And they retain the modern part of the game as well, with the little puzzles when you want to re-interface with the game. How they integrated mixed reality, I thought that was fantastic.
That was jarring the first time I saw it. Then the more I thought about it when I was doing the call, I was like, okay, no, this actually works. Because it actually feels right that I'm in a different space than what I was just in 2 seconds ago, because you're in a virtual world in Assassin's Creed, like technically. So you're being pulled back to the real world because now you're the character, the hacker. So yeah, I like how they kind of use mixed reality to kind of integrate it into the story. I thought that was really, really smart.
So I was very, very happy with how they chose to handle the parkour. I love how they integrated puzzles like any other Assassin's Creed game. There's still exploration. The map isn't so big that it feels, I mean, yeah, sure, we wish we had a full open world, but the areas that we got are nice and large. There's room to explore, and everything has physics. So overall, I thought it was a really impressive experience.
Yeah, I think in VR, some people tend to forget that in VR, you're inherently limited in what you can do combat-wise by the physicality of the person who's playing the game. And that's something you don't really deal with on flat screen unless you're doing like competitive MOBAs like League, where like, APM becomes something that's really important. Then it's all about facial reflexes and hand-eye coordination, stuff like that. But in VR, you're more restricted than you ever would be in the flat screen by the physical capability of the player. So if a player can't move their hand this fast to parry like 4 or 5 different attacks at once, they're gonna die every time, and they're gonna be like, screw this, I'm not playing this game. So a lot of VR melee combat feels the same to me, but it's just a matter of how they implement how they scale and how they ramp it.
Well, there's only 3 types, right? There's either Cryman, which is what this is, but a far more polished version of that. There's Blade and Sorcery, which is, it ends up devolving into violence porn, right? I mean, it's just basically either your physics engine works and now you're fighting with the physics engine, which I don't want to do that when I'm playing Assassin's Creed. I want it to flow all the time. So, or you have this, which is a great middle ground. I can't think of any other melee combat systems. Oh, I guess what's that game that's Final Fight like? Streets of Rage like?
Path of the Warrior.
Path of the Warrior. I guess there's that, but that doesn't really feel like you're connecting with anything. So
no, and I love that game, but yeah, you're throwing punches, but there's no haptic feedback, obviously. Even in the controllers, if you land the punch, there's no haptic feedback telling you land the punch in that game.
Right.
Last question. Do you think Assassin's Creed Nexus will sell headsets?
No, I think it's a fantastic game. It is a great example of what mobile VR can do when you really put some effort behind it. I think it was a great acquisition. It was a great investment by Meta, but no, I don't think this is gonna sell headsets. I don't see anybody being convinced that plays flat Assassin's Creed to wanting to make the jump and being convinced that this is the ideal way to play the game.
I'm almost diametrically opposite to you.
Really?
I think when people talk about getting big IPs and big names in the VR, this is why you do that. You do that to entice the people who may be legacy fans of those series to say, you know what? I didn't really care about VR, but my favorite series, there are people out there who love Assassin's Creed. That's their favorite series ever. You can sell a VR headset to them, especially since Quest 2 is going to be $250 this holiday season. You can sell someone and spending $250 to play their favorite series. Like, I'm speaking as a Zelda guy, I bought systems because of Zelda. I had no interest in owning a Wii. I bought a Wii because Skyward Sword came out.
If I'm coming from flat Assassin's Creed, yes, this is solid, but I haven't seen in any review anyone says that this is transformative. Everyone says this is a really competent game and it's really well done. Yay Meta, yay Ubisoft. But it's not like when you're looking at Half-Life Alyx, where you feel like this is a different experience. This changes how Half-Life feels. This is monumental for VR because of the way you interact with it. This is not that, right? It's a solid game. It is a very solid mid game that plays well and is a great showcase for meta. But
I
if
guess
I'm coming
I
for
would
flat, I'm just
question.
going to poke holes in it.
I guess I would question how many people who have never experienced VR value the interaction because they don't know what they don't have. They don't know what they don't know. You can much more easily sell a brand than an experience.
Okay, let me simplify it then.
If
When
that
you
makes
played
sense.
Resident Evil 4 on Quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has played Resident Evil 1,000 times, right? But when you played Resident Evil 4 in Quest, you were like, whoa, I've never played it like this. This feels different. Did you have that experience with this?
That's different because I've played Resident Evil games before, so I was already familiar with what that process was.
No, I mean 4. I mean 4 specific.
Yeah.
I played 7. I played 7
Yeah.
too. I like 7 just like everybody. I love 7. But when you played 4, after having played it 1,000 times, and again, this is no slight on Ubisoft.
Play the game. Play the GameCube version. Yep.
When you played that Quest version, this felt like something completely different. It's the same game, but it's not at all the same game. I don't think that's the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's fair. You're saying Assassin's Creed doesn't hit that level. You're saying Assassin's Creed doesn't meet that standard.
No,
okay,
this is a good game. It's a solid game, but it doesn't. It's not a way to convince you to get into VR. It is solid.
Okay.
And if I'm already a hater on VR and I'm coming flat, I'm going to poke holes in it.
We'll wrap it up here. Appreciate everybody watching. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this. We'll do this. It won't be the full crew because managing 5 schedules is very difficult. But around the release time of games, if a couple of us have played it, we'll definitely hop on and give you our impressions, and hopefully you enjoy that. So thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Peace.